Friends, welcome back to one final episode of Bibliophiles. Keep your shirts on. We're not ending the show. We're just ending this season.
Right
The
on,
season
right
of
on.
Bibliophiles
And also,
comes to
keep
an
your
end
shirts
today.
on in general, you know?
Yeah, sure.
That's a
You
good
should
rule.
keep your shirts on. Today, we are doing a retrospective, a wrap-up, if you will, of our whole season, which has been so much fun, talking about film as literature in all sorts of various ways. I hope you guys have enjoyed yourselves as much as we have enjoyed ourselves recording these episodes. Today, I have a question for you. This icebreaker is going to take the whole episode. You guys ready?
Let's do
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And I'll take volunteers for our first contestant. We have been instructed to choose a title and pretend that we are in the, I guess it's sort of a hybrid chair, the directors and casting chair, and cast the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter, ground rules, doesn't matter if this has been adapted before, because it's your own idea of who you'd want to play the roles and how you'd want to adapt it yourself.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Would it have changed your goal?
Maybe, but that's okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
That doesn't necessarily
okay.
matter. You just have to choose a title and then tell us who would play the principal parts and why you think so. And you are, everyone can argue with everyone. Let the fisticuffs begin.
Nice.
Who would like to go first?
I did think we had to choose a work of literature that had never been adapted before.
I also
Oh,
thought
yeah.
this.
I didn't know that. I
Okay.
definitely chose one that has been adapted before.
I
So
thought you
extra
had to
brownie
choose
points
something.
if you chose one that has never been adapted before.
All
I
right,
hereby
good.
Decree it.
So
Okay.
who's volunteering to go first?
Well, should we start with a funny one or a serious one?
That's a great question.
Someone took it seriously.
I took, well, I did. Of course I did. I played the straight man in this group.
Nice.
How about the straight man will go first and then y'all can kind of follow up with some comic relief. How's that?
Sounds great.
Okay,
That's great.
so I want to see somebody do a good job with Divine Comedy.
Ooh, okay.
You have said that before.
I know. I just think it's ripe for all of the special effects that we're capable of at this point in time. Somebody tried it. There was a Spencer Tracy film version of the Inferno in 1935. And I kind of peeked into it a little bit, didn't watch the whole thing because the special effects were, shall we say, lacking.
Pre-war.
It was black and white. And it was pretty bad in terms of the special effects. It looked like a carnival.
Whoa.
So, I just like to see it done today. There was also a 1924 silent film version of it, as I understand it. But
Seems
I
like
did
the
some,
wailing and gnashing of teeth wouldn't really come across in a silent.
right. Yeah, right. I think there was full frontal nudity in it though. So that's
Whoa.
Oh, dear.
interesting.
Oh, no.
Any of you who, hear this and say, I think I'll go looking for that. Maybe don't. But
Be aware.
I hear that there's something in the works perhaps with
Interesting.
this right now with I think it's Warner Brothers that is
Really
they
not
have bought the rights to a
A24.
script. A what?
Are you sure it's not A24? Because those guys love to do weird stuff.
No, it's Warner Brothers has brought the rights to a film script by Dwayne Worrell,
Ooh.
Can't
who got to
recall having
start
heard that
doing
name.
The Wall for Netflix. And he's done
Oh.
a couple of things that I'd never heard of before, but they vied for his script. And I found information online that it had begun in 2014 and then another article about it in 2020, but there's no projected date for it to be released. And they're not saying who's directing. They're not saying who's starring. There's really no information. The last time that it kind of fell apart for them, it was because they thought it was going to take too much money. So I don't know, maybe they've shelved it for a while now too. Who knows? But since it hasn't come out yet, I put together my own little cast. Okay.
Okay, who do we have where?
Also,
Okay.
just by the
Who are
by,
we punishing?
before I
and
tell
why?
you
Who are we
that,
punishing?
one of the things I noticed is that it looks like Worrell's script strays from the original quite a bit.
Capital.
Well, yeah, he
capital
probably
I with
puts
her.
actual people from our time in hell, like Dante did.
Yeah, well, that would be interesting. But
Emily laughs
that'd be really
wickedly.
I was in hell and you all were there.
You were on.
well, in this particular film, he has Dante being a hero descending into the 9 circles of hell in order to rescue his beloved Beatrice.
That's
So
a-
how's that for
Well,
a
that's
role
an
reversal?
interesting reading. Yeah.
I know. And all I'm thinking is, seriously, in this day and age, you're going to pull that one? I mean, Wonder what the feminists are going to say. Ooh. He's taking Beatrice, who is the heroine, right? The heroine Beatrice, who sends Virgil down to rescue Dante, and to
making her the
eventually,
damsel in distress.
yeah, what the heck is that, right?
That's
Okay,
crazy.
anyway, laying that aside and moving ahead, I bet that what they're going to do is capitalize on the. I bet they're going to make it a franchise and drag the Inferno itself out, right? So that each circle is its own movie.
That sounds like the
That
most boring thing I've
sounds
ever
terrible.
heard.
Doesn't that sound
No
awful?
one's going to see that.
Mhm.
I know who would watch that. Okay, but what I think they should do is stick to the three, right, and do a franchise of 3 films, like Dante's 3 books. I think that the first should be the Inferno, and then the Brutorio, and the Paradiso, right? And in the Inferno, it's the only one that I've cast. I think that the director should be Peter Jackson, of course.
Okay, obviously.
right? Because
Perfect.
he could
Okay.
make great hay with all of the necessary, scary,
Goons and
dramatic
gargoyles.
tension. Yeah, all that
Mm.
stuff. He would be awesome at that. I think that Steven Zalian should write the script. He's the guy that wrote Schindler's List. So he's
Oh.
adept at
Gracious.
doing a fine job with dramatic tension. And he's sensitive, right? So it wouldn't just devolve into a carnival if somebody with a little sensitivity was working with the script. I think the score should be done by John Williams,
Mm.
or maybe John Williams paired up with Jean-Yves Thibaudet. Am I saying his name right?
I
Yes.
don't know. Who is that?
Okay. He also participated in the Pride and Prejudice
Oh.
score.
You have prepared so well for this. I'm
So
really
Anyway.
does
No,
the fact
I
that in
haven't
real
thought about the
life,
score.
alpha dogs like John Williams don't pair up with people? That doesn't.
It doesn't matter to
bother
me.
us.
This
It
is in
doesn't
a
matter.
perfect
Yeah,
world,
I'm
right?
not
Because we
concerned.
would get the epic grandeur of John Williams' scores paired with the sensitivity of Thibaudet's scores. I think it would be a brilliant pairing.
Dante
Yes.
enters the Inferno. Do, do, do,
Yeah.
do, do.
Oh no, you're
Jurassic Park, but demons, you guys. Demons.
That's what he would get in reference to anything about Beatrice. We'd get that little line in the background.
It's so
Okay.
funny.
All right, so let's see. Casting the roles. Dante. Any guesses?
No, the guesses is
No,
you.
the
You're supposed to
guessing is
give us your guesses.
Oh no,
Appropriate
I'm
here.
going to tell you
Yes.
who I'd cast.
Just tell
I
us.
just wondered if you had any guesses about who I would choose for Dante. Who would you choose for Dante?
Why-
Because I've cast. Well, I have 3. You guys have to help me narrow it down.
Ah, yes. The truth
This
comes
is the
out.
casting call. The casting call is we could go with Adrian Brody.
Mm.
Kind of looks the part,
Italian nose, yeah.
right? Yeah, he's kind of long in the face and reminds me of Dante.
Okay.
Or maybe Leonardo DiCaprio.
Italian name.
Also
Great
great.
job.
I think he could do a great job with the part. Consider Steve Carell maybe too comedic.
Steve
don't know.
Carell
I
for
think it'd be too
Dante?
funny.
Carell.
Too
Steve
funny
Carell
for
is
the
too
role.
funny. I agree. He's too funny for the role.
Well,
But I think
do-
Adrian Brody or Leonardo DiCaprio could do a good job.
You might have
What do you
to
think?
make the Divine Comedy a comedy for this to get pulled off.
Well, that's what I kept thinking is that it's very dramatic and there's a lot of tension, but there should be a little bit of comedic element to it, right? It's not a comedy, ha ha. It's a comedy happy ending, and not until we get through book 3, right? But I don't know. I think that Steve Carell's movies, he is good at comedy, but all of his movies have some depth.
That's
Like
true.
they're always
Mm.
talking about something real and important. And so
Maybe it
anyway,
should
that's
be
what I
directed
thought.
by Judd Apatow instead.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's a good idea.
All right, so
right.
Beatrice. I struggled with Beatrice because she's the divine Beatrice, and most of the actresses that I was pulling up online didn't look divine. They just were really pretty. Maybe Keira Knightley I don't
As
know.
Beatrice.
or Emma Watson.
Wouldn't-
Who would
I
you
don't know.
cast as Beatrice? Drew Barrymore?
Maybe that's
I think
better.
She's a little plain. I
Well,
mean, like
I'm
don't
about
mean-
to say
wait, that
something
sounds
controversial.
insulting.
I was
I'm
like,
about to
you
say
just said
something.
that on the
I
air.
meant
Emily.
like Girl Next
Drew
Door.
Barrymore. Plain.
I always sort of thought
Jennifer
of-
Garner?
I always sort of thought of Beatrice's virtues as virtues of the heart.
Yes.
So you think she should
And-
be an ugly girl
I think yes.
with a good
maybe so.
personality?
With a great personality.
If you're
Yeah,
trying
but
to
that-
convey holiness on screen without it being sappy, it's helpful if the person portraying it is a little homely.
Oh, I
There's
know.
this, what is her name? There's a French actress who's blonde and looks
Yeah.
very, very beautiful
Leah
and
Seydoux?
kind of ethereal. No, not Leah Seydoux. She's a little sultry, actually. You guys, this is so funny. She played Fleur Delacour in The Goblet of Fire. That's how I know her.
Oh, I know
And
who
she's
you
thought
mean.
that was
beautiful
Leah
and kind of
Seydoux.
like, well, she's kind of holy looking. I don't know.
Okay,
She's
she
real
would
holy
do.
looking.
She's got to be
She's a
pretty
real Alice
because,
Wendlicken.
Yeah,
because
really
if you
though.
know anything about Dante, he
Clemence
falls in love
Posey,
with
that's her
from
name.
afar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think, and she doesn't have many lines either. So the girl.
Well, she does have lines, but not in the first film. So anyway, it would be somebody that we'd want to cast for all 3 movies. So she
I
would
think-
eventually
yeah.
have a lot of lines, like in the Paradiso. Anyway,
Sure.
laying that aside, moving on. Who's going to be Virgil? I thought of Patrick Stewart of Star Trek
Oh,
fame.
That's a good casting choice.
Ooh.
Don't you
Yeah.
think he
Sir
would be
Patrick
great?
Stewart.
I think he'd be great as Virgil.
The bald guy.
I also consider
slender
Benedict
hips.
Cumberbatch. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
If you've seen him in
Wouldn't
Star
he be
Trek, you know
great
what I mean.
in a Roman robe, a toga.
Little
Anyway.
toga action.
Yeah, he could do it. I think Benedict Cumberbatch could also pull it off big time.
Yeah, I see that.
So you're burying the lead here because I want to know who we're punishing and where they are in hell.
Yes, me
Well,
too.
yeah, I told you. I just chose the major roles, and I'm gonna leave
So
all
you
that
didn't
aside.
you didn't choose an actor to be chewed on forever in the mouth of the devil. You didn't do that.
No, but I did choose the devil.
Who's the devil?
Oh,
So my last casting choice is, of course, 3 because of the 3 faces of Satan. Right? We're getting
Oh.
Jack Nicholson, Johnny Depp, and Christopher Walken.
whoa! Good
That is
choice.
great. I love the whole
This
thing. That is awesome.
Definitely a comedy.
Christopher
All right.
Walken.
So talk amongst yourselves. How would you change it up?
I,
I
think
don't
it's
know that I
great.
would
I'd
change
love
it.
to see it.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would watch that. I
Yeah.
think
Would you watch
I
it?
think you kind of knocked it out of the park.
I think so too. I think you have a directorial problem, but
Yes.
that's easily fixed.
So who would you get to direct if not Peter Jackson?
Well, you have to go one of 2 directions. It either has to be extremely philosophical, so you should get a Terrence Malick, or I really think it could work to go black comedy, in which case you would get Judd Apatow.
Yeah, I think Judd Apatow could kind of kill that.
I'm game.
That's brilliant. I think you absolutely killed it. It's exactly what I
So
was looking
fun.
for, and so much deeper than any of the preparation that I did. I'm really proud of you.
I know it's a
Thank
little
you.
intimidating, to be
I got-
perfectly honest.
I got
Okay,
hung,
so there's
hung
my
up on
straight
who should
man.
play who. Okay, who's your straight man?
Wait, you have
Well,
another?
somebody else has to go.
No,
now.
I said that's my straight man. I was the straight man.
You were the
now
straight
it's
man.
your turn for
Oh, I
comic
see.
relief.
Okay, who's next?
Well, I'll go next because I think that it might be helpful to offset our classics that we're focusing on. I was thinking of a juvenile fiction work that I have always wished there was a good movie adaptation of, and it's The Girl of the Limberlost. That story
Oh.
I read at the perfect time in my life. It was beautiful.
Porter.
It's if you read it without understanding, it's super duper preachy and didactic. However, if you discover it at the right moment in your life, it's lovely, and the naturalism in it is captivating, and the atmosphere is great, and the storyline itself is a fairy tale. So if you know that going in, then the one-dimensional quality of the various characters is actually kind of winning, and you treat it like a Cinderella story, a rags to riches novel.
Mhm.
As a result, the casting choices are fun because you have a lot of one-dimensional strong silent types to work with. So for those of you who don't know the story, we've got a common country girl. Her name is Elnora Comstock, who's supposed to be quietly lovely without even trying, even though, despite her circumstances, she's Cinderella. And in my mind, the lady who played Fanny Price in Mansfield Park, her name is Frances O'Connor. I think she would play a great Elnora Comstock because she's beautiful, but in kind of an effortless way. And she also has a good sense of humor, which I think that character needs. There needs to be an element of humor to make her likable on screen because she is going to be Cinderella. She's going to be kind of perfect in every way, but like a down-home country girl kind of Cinderella. So I think Frances O'Connor would do a good job. She's supposed to have kind of a waspish mother, this Comstock girl. Mrs. Comstock is supposed to be kind of hardened by life's trials and almost unbelievably cruel. And so I think Tilda Swinton should play that
Nice.
character because she
Yes.
kind of looks, she always plays kind of a waspish character. She looks very
Yeah.
sharp, all her features,
Bitten.
but she's also supposed to have an appreciation for Mark Twain's kind of sinister sense of humor. So I think Tilda Swinton could play both
Totally.
sides
That's
of
a
that
good
character really well.
casting.
The difficult part comes when in the second half of the novel, it becomes not a coming of age story for young Elnora Comstock, but a romance. And she is courted by this handsome man who just comes traipsing through the woods one day, lucky her. And he has no character whatsoever except being hunky and in love with her. Kind of beside the point, he's already engaged to some other woman. It's fine. He's supposed to be beautiful and
You know,
winning and winsome.
Like you said, no character, whatever.
Isn't he also kind of
Character.
sickly? Like he's recovering from being ill.
Yes, except that somehow he's also hunky. Like he's ill and sickly, but he's also like strong and swarthy. He manages to be both. So in my mind, he should be Henry Cavill because
Oh.
he's pale, but also big and strong and manly, right? I feel like he could pull it off. Anyway,
Wow.
Philip
I don't know
Ammon is
Henry
supposed to
Cavill.
be
Who's-
Superman.
Who is
Henry Cavill played Superman in
Oh.
the most
Recently.
recent adaptation.
Okay.
You just imagine Superman,
have to look
and
it
there
up.
you go. The most handsome Superman you've ever seen. That's
No,
Henry
known
Cavill.
Christopher
among
Reeves.
known among most of my male
beats the
peers as
snot
the
out
most
of Christopher
beautiful man
Reeves.
in the world.
He might be. So if you're thinking of like a one-dimensional picture of male beauty, Henry Cavill fits. So I put him in there. There you go. However, possibly the most interesting part of this story, no spoilers intended, is a love story that happens in the background between the spurned fiance, Edith Carr, who's the most beautiful woman of her generation. She is the star of society, and her loyal lover, Hart Henderson. All these titles are
Love
so
Hart
great. You should totally
Henderson.
read this book. But he is the heart and soul of this novel. He's just loyal and true and faithful,
Hart.
and he loves her, even though she completely ignores him and has eyes only for Philip Ammon and frankly herself. So Hart Henderson needs to be this
Ouch.
character who is, well, he's supposed to be like a film noir character where he's clean cut and heroic, but also kind of a tragic hero. So in my mind, Adrian Brody fits that really well. He manages to be handsome, but he's not the
Nice.
leading man, but he's got these soulful, sad eyes. I don't know. I think he works.
So
You know what I
Adrian
mean?
Brody got cast both as Dante and as your what's his name?
Hart Henderson.
Hart Henderson.
Yeah, Adrian Brody, he's a compelling sad character. You know, if he's gonna suffer, he needs to be Adrian Brody.
So Adrian Brody is he's going to be rich at the end of this this little experiment that we're
I think
having.
he
Well,
probably
we like
already
him.
is.
He's landed some roles.
I did want to ask though, I'm not sure, as I was thinking of a director for this film, I'm not sure which direction it should go because while it has fairy tale elements, which makes me think Kenneth Branagh, who is the best
Mhm.
adapter of fairy tales that I know, he brings such a light and a beauty to them and makes them whimsical and deep rather than surfacey. And I
Mhm.
would love all of those elements to be present in this adaptation. I like Greta Gerwig's interpretation of character much more. And so I think she might do a good job with the natural scenes, etc. What do you guys think?
I wonder about is it William Goldman who did Princess Bride?
He's the
Ooh.
author of The Princess Bride.
He's
I
the
think.
author of the.
Didn't he also
novel.
direct?
I don't know.
I don't
I don't
think
know.
so.
Maybe not. Maybe
That'd
I'm
be
wrong
cool.
about
It would
that.
make it an adventure story. But lastly, I
think
thought
Greta
of.
Gerwig.
You think so?
Rob
well, maybe
Reiner
she'll
directed
direct.
The Princess Bride.
Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner, you're right.
I
That
could
would be
think
fun.
one way we should have taken this question is think of a director and then find him a story, right? Like
Yeah.
I can think of some
a
stories I
good
want Rob
idea.
Reiner to direct. That is great.
Totally.
Brilliant,
Well,
Megan.
that's kind of my interpretation.
Yeah.
And in my mind, the music in the background is Richard Rodney Bennett's scores. He was the one who did the score for Enchanted April, which is
Oh.
a strange little movie, but very beautiful. And
That
its music is
my
primarily
favorite
like
film.
oboe music. It's really pretty.
I love it. It's gorgeous.
That is a really
Anyway.
great score.
What do you talk about? You're talking about how you're not prepared. Are you kidding me?
Oh, well, I threw it together. This is something I want. I want this.
Wow.
Maybe I should direct it.
This whole
so
thing.
great. Yeah, we'll transcribe your casting just then, and we'll start sending it to studios. See if anyone can-
And if they would redo it, it'd be great. This actually, I didn't know the rule that we were supposed to pick one that hadn't been done, and this has been done. I think I'm not exactly sure when. It was a long enough ago that it feels really dated.
You know
And
what
they
it feels
only
like
told
as
the
a-
first half of the story. They actually only told the coming of age story. where she basically it's about her relationship with her mother rather than the part that makes little girls' hearts go pitty pat, where she becomes a grown woman and,
You
falls
could
in love. And
Anne of Green Gables that action though.
Yeah,
exactly.
I wonder if they
Who
intended to,
directed
if
that?
it was popular enough, do a sequel.
I think that the
Sullivan.
original one really reminded me of like a Saturday afternoon movie special on TV.
Yeah,
You
it
guys
was.
probably don't remember
Like Old
those, but
Yeller.
Well, you
Yeah,
nap
something like
through
that.
it, you nap through it. It's not the point.
Mm.
Anyway, that's my contribution.
I love it. That's great. I would
That's
see that.
great.
Okay, Dad, you're next.
I want to see the junior high novels of Gary D. Schmidt committed
yeah.
to film.
Baby.
awesome.
Now we're
100%.
talking.
And I don't think it's ever been done because they're recent enough. And there are at least 3 of them that share characters and sort of belong in the same universe of story. Although the latest one, Orbiting Jupiter, only has a
Well,
tangential connection.
Just Like That is the newest one.
Oh,
and
that's
it's-
right.
and
So
is the
so
same
it
universe.
starts with the Wednesday Wars starring Holling Hood and his buddies at the junior high school, and then is followed up by OK for Now,
Oh, so
which
good.
has Holling Hood in a minor role and takes over
Doug
with the story of
Swiatek.
Doug Swiatek, and then Orbiting Jupiter features Doug Swiatek's older brother in a minor role, and then I don't know about Just Like That. That
It's
actually
the
has
girl. It's the girl from OK for Now. I can't
Right.
remember her name.
Holly
I
Hood's
could-
girlfriend.
Yeah, so I can
Mhm.
see a series of movies that are set in the junior high school world of kids in the 60s, in the Vietnam War era and following. That would be pretty compelling, mostly because Gary Schmidt has such great things to say
Right.
in those novels, and I think it needs to be said. And it would be great to see a director who's good at telling stories set in that time of life do it justice. I don't know who I would want to direct it because my first thought is Steven Spielberg, who's famous for setting stories among kids and
Yeah,
taking
sure.
the child's view
Goonies
of the
and-
world.
Yep.
But I don't know. I would want it to be more serious than a lot of the Steven Spielberg type movies that I've
Yeah.
seen. So Steven's probably not going to listen to this, so I can go ahead and speak freely.
I think you probably can.
But I would be looking for a little bit more gravitas than you get from Goonies.
E.T.
Right. But however, an ensemble cast of teenagers is just the thing.
Fun.
So I would want maybe somebody like Steven Spielberg. Rob Reiner actually directed Stand By Me, which has a cast of kids, and it's also a
Oh,
little
that's a good idea.
darker and deeper, right? In feel.
that
What
would
about
wrecked
what
me.
about Wes Anderson, Dad?
I think he's
Too whimsical?
too
Too weird.
avant-garde, too whimsical.
It's
Too
pretty
weird.
whimsical. I wouldn't call OK for Now and the Wednesday Wars whimsical. That wouldn't
No,
be
not so much.
the vibe.
They're almost
But
gritty.
Yeah,
they're
I
a little
think they
bit
are.
gritty, yeah. But casting wise, though, and this may cross up expectations. I would want the entire cast of The Sandlot
Yeah.
That's a great
to
idea.
be hired for this
Totally.
movie.
Perfect.
I
They're
want,
probably old men by now, though.
yeah, but there's some adjustments. They are old men, but it's timeless, right? I
It's
get to
timeless.
have
You can do whatever you want.
I get to have Chauncey Leparty, for example, who plays Squints in The Sandlot,
Yes.
gets to be Doug Swiatek.
Mhm.
And it's not
Absolutely.
it's not grown up Chauncey Leparty. He's in his 40s now, and he looks like a man with dark glasses.
Right.
That's not who I'd want. I'd want the Chauncey Leparty of The Sandlot, who played Doug
She knows
Swiatek.
exactly what
Lotioning
she's
and
doing.
oiling.
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 Oiling
and
lotioning. I can't take it anymore.
Especially, I would want Dennis Leary, who plays the little protagonist's father. I would want him to play Holling Hood's father with exactly the same
Totally.
attitude,
Yeah.
chain smoking, hard bitten attitude.
Yes.
But two little deviations from the cast of The Sandlot. I would want the guy that plays Biff in Home Alone to be Doug Swiatek's brother.
Oh, that's a great
The
casting
big
choice.
Wait, is he
Beefcake.
the beefy brother who's got
Yeah,
the
the-
tarantula?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I would want him to play Doug Swiatek's brother, who only says something. The only thing he ever says in the Wednesday Wars is "You're dead,"
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
And then for the starring role of Holling Hood in the Wednesday Wars, I want Tom Holland, who plays the
yeah.
Spider-Man, the newest
The
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man kid.
and I've only seen the first one of those because I'm behind in the Marvel universe, and I don't know if he grows up later on in the movies, but he is
doesn't.
not grown up yet in
He
the
looks
first
eternally
one,
young.
and it's perfect. Not only is he slight and skinny and fresh faced, but he also acts like a naive teenager,
Yep.
which is critical for Hollywood Hood. So that's what I would do, and I would keep Spielberg on a very short leash. If he
That's fair.
I'd like to
if he
see
went
that.
whimsical, and in particular, if he started giving kids lines that communicated that they were the ones driving the boat, driving
Yeah.
the ship, calling the tune in this world at all, I would
Mhm.
fire him and hire Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
Totally
You're
fair.
probably better with him from the beginning, honestly.
Oh man.
That
Because-
is awesome.
And I hope, I mean, none of that's going to happen, but I hope they do make a movie out of the Wednesday Wars are okay for now someday, because I think that would be really, really worth it.
Well, there's some precedent recently for books in that genre relatively to get movie treatments. I mean, John Green's novels have gotten movie treatments.
Oh, that's true.
And I put
yeah,
him
you're right.
in a similar category to Gary Schmidt. I don't think he has nearly as much to say, but in terms of skill as an author, and especially skill in writing kids, he's on par with Gary Schmidt.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I should have looked up who's putting those movies together.
Yeah, I don't know who's directing those. I'd like to know though. But they also I mean, there's some heavy content in those as well. I mean, that director
Yeah.
might be eminently qualified to handle a Gary Schmidt novel.
That's a good thought. Josh Boone, The Fault in Our Stars.
Josh.
Yeah, that was the
Boone.
best one. They've kind of gone. I mean, I haven't seen all
I-
of them, but I did not
Well,
think
The
Paper Town
next
was
one,
as
Looking
good.
for Alaska, was hilarious.
I've never seen Looking for Alaska.
Funny, very funny.
Ansel Elgort is in the first one, so
Yeah.
that's my favorite. Is that revealing? Sure.
Sure, it is. Sure, but it's fine. Dad, who would what do you envision the soundtrack being like? Do you want like a throwback soundtrack of stuff that was on the radio in the era, kind of like the
Yeah.
Sandlot? Or
Yeah, so like The Sandlot, or like Good Morning Vietnam, where all the
Yeah.
1960s rock and roll is playing. I would want that,
that's awesome.
because the Vietnam War era and the 1960s era New York Yankees baseball and all that stuff that's very culturally specific is shot through that first novel at
Yeah, it
least.
sure is.
That would be cool to have that reflected in the soundtrack.
Mhm.
I love it. Look at the breadth
Sounds like
of
a good time.
stories that we've treated on film so far. We've got Dante's Inferno. We've got The Girl of the Limberlost. Is it a girl of the Limberlost, or
It's-
the girl?
It's
Hey.
a girl. It's
A
not
girl.
the only girl. it's
Presumably
just
there
one
are
of 'em.
multiple girls in the Limberlost.
We
Except
don't see
funny-
them all. We only
Funnily
see
enough, there
one.
aren't. It's just the
Yeah.
one.
It's just
but
the one.
Yeah.
Well, there was the Swamp Angel from long ago.
I
And
think
then
it
we've
might
got
be that she is a girl born from the Limberlost rather than she is the representative of the Limberlost. You see what I mean? You see what
but
I'm
you
saying?
do
Do
see
you
the
see what I'm
confusion.
saying?
The confusion is real.
You probably just call
Yeah.
the movie Limberlost.
And then we've got Gary Schmidt.
Right.
Um,
Lost.
I wish I'd thought of Gary Schmidt.
Dot,
I
dot, dot.
probably
The
would have
other
tried
one.
to cast Anson's Way.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
What a
man.
great one.
That would be great.
Such
Yeah,
a
if you wanna
great idea. Has
cry
that ever
all the
been
time.
done?
I don't think it has, but that's the first one I would choose to adapt from Gary Schmidt. Because
Isn't it set in Scotland?
period
No,
dramas, all
Ireland.
the rage right now.
Scotland.
So
man.
you'd have no shortage of
get
actors from the BBC to
You and
staff the
McGregor to
thing.
be the father.
Yes.
No.
That's never been made into a movie. That would be so cool.
Oh, that would be sweet. Okay, but that's not the one we chose. And Emily's up. Emily, go.
I'm
Emily,
up.
go. Go,
Well, I
Emily.
really struggled because I was under the impression that I was looking for something that hadn't been beat to death, and I'm not very imaginative.
Okay, enough with the disclaimers. I've heard what
Yeah.
you're doing, and it's
Okay,
awesome.
Come on,
okay,
Emily.
okay.
Let's go.
Well, I decided to cast The Secret History, which was the Donna Tartt novel that I really liked that I read recently because it's never been done. They recently did The Goldfinch, and did a pretty good job with it. So I thought that would be fun. And I had to come up with a cast of young college age students. So for the narrator, Richard, who is the observer of all of them, who really wants to be, this is the story about the group of students in the school that are led astray by their professor into like the dark side of Greek myth.
Okay.
So, well, maybe I'll start with the professor. The professor could either be, we could either go in the direction of it being Kenneth Branagh, or so he's like eminently charming, but kind of like his role in Harry Potter. He
Mhm.
has
Right.
he
A sinister
unknowingly, yeah,
underside,
there's a
yeah.
sinister underside that isn't necessarily intentional. Or we could go full blown American Charming and do like George Clooney or like Brad Pitt in that role.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Clooney would be great.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah, I think George Clooney would be really good.
Like George Clooney from a decade or so ago.
Yeah, when he was, but Silver Fox.
Ocean's
era
11.
still-
Yeah.
Mhm.
he still has to be a Silver Fox.
I think he was always a silver.
I think so too.
He was born with gray hair.
So for the narrator, who's the observer, and kind of accidentally participates in the coming murder, I think that I would do Joe Keery. Although I think Ian disagrees with me about that.
Steve Harrington.
He's a
For
little
those who
dopey,
don't
but
know.
Harry- the
maybe
Harry
it could
Harrington.
work.
Then for the bad guy, the student who is the direct disciple of the professor, and then kind of the lead of all the other students, I was thinking maybe Ansel Elgort, although it turns out he was also in The Goldfinch. So that'd
Also,
be a
if you
double
put Ansel
appearance.
Elgort and Joe Keery in the same movie, people will just get them confused the whole time.
It's true.
They're in the same visual
well.
category as actors.
So there are twins in the movie, and I thought that they're like
Fred and
speech
George Weasley?
types.
Let's go.
Well, these are like the
a brother and
speech
sister.
types. It's a brother
Oh,
and
okay.
sister. So I was thinking Timothy Chalamet and Saoirse Ronan.
Yep.
But that means that it might automatically be directed by Greta Gerwig.
Just not the right
It's not,
tone.
no, that's not right.
Yeah.
And then Bunny, the one who dies, he's the oaf who kind of dies. I was thinking maybe a younger.
He
Miles
kind of dies or
Teller.
he really dies?
No, he really dies.
Okay.
He's kind of
Dies.
dopey.
This is
Okay.
that is also doesn't give anything away. That the
The opening chapter
opening
is that-
reveals
Gotcha.
that there's been a murder,
Yeah.
and the story is told in retrospect. So.
and he's kind of a
Miles
bully.
Teller.
So I'm thinking Miles Teller. And I think that this is probably a PTA movie, a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Ooh,
Wait, what else did he direct for my sake?
There Will Be Blood. What's the one with the Taylor? Phantom Thread.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, that one?
Phantom Thread.
Oh.
Anyway, see, I chose one that nobody knew anything about because I was racking my brain for a movie that hadn't been, or a book that hadn't been adapted.
That's awesome. I want to both read that book and see that movie.
Me too.
My other thought was because it's on the brain. I was like, I could also do Franny and Zooey.
Yeah.
It could be Saoirse Ronan and Timothy Chalamet, and then it would be directed by Greta Gerwig.
Yep. I could totally see that too. Well, so that's it. Those are all the characters that you need.
Yeah.
You gotta
It's
have
true.
her boorish boyfriend at the beginning.
A couple of
And I guess
cardboard
an older
cutouts
brother.
here and there, and
Yeah.
you're done casting.
There you go.
that's brilliant. I love it. Who do you want to direct again?
For The Secret History.
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the mood I was thinking.
Very brooding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did
It's
you
a
guys ever see
murder
Phantom
story.
Thread?
No,
No, I haven't yet. I want to.
Should watch that movie. That's a crazy movie.
really.
Yeah, fabulous performances. But then just such a profoundly weird story. It's great stuff.
I love it. So Paul Thomas Anderson directed There Will Be Blood.
Yes.
I loved that.
Okay, Ian, I was gonna put Timothy Chalamet in the Henry role, in the bad guy role, but what if that was Paul Dano working with PTA again? A younger Paul Dano.
That would be amazing. We'd have to rewind 15 years, but
That's
We
very
can do
much a
that. We
role
said
he
we
would-
can do that.
He punches somebody in the face. It's perfect.
yeah, it's
Whoa.
totally Paul Dano. That's a great idea. I love
Nailed
that.
it.
That's perfect.
He always goes off his rocker and punches somebody
Yep.
at least once in a film,
Yes.
Really good stuff.
shaking with rage.
Okay, so I want to do a little bit of a collaborative one. I have some ideas about this, but I have my paper is completely covered in crosses outs and replacements, and I can't decide how old the actors should be and what the tone of the movie should be. Let's collaborate on this one, okay? I have chosen The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Ooh, awesome.
Hmm.
which I've never seen a film adaptation of. I'm sure that one exists.
There's a Boris Karloff version, isn't there?
That checks out. I bet you're right. I think Dad's probably looking it up.
1931.
Okay. So it's at least been a long time since they tried one of these. And I think that I would want Christopher Nolan directing.
Yep.
Reason for that being I have seen The Prestige, and that is the perfect tone for an updated Jekyll and Hyde. I think he
Hmm.
would-
Also, arguably, kind of is
kind of
a
is
Jekyll and Hyde story.
a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, it's similar. So I know he can do it, is what I'm trying to say. He can
Okay.
pull this off. I also just love Christopher Nolan. So I think Nolan should direct. And kind of where I'm going right now is the only person that I was able to cast immediately without any trouble was Utterson, who's the narrator of the story.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And I'm casting Brian Cox.
Remind me who that is.
Brian Cox is, let's see, what would you know him
He's
from?
Kutuzov.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yes.
Kutuzov.
Love him.
So I'm casting Brian Cox as Utterson because I want his voice to narrate the story, right? That would be
Totally.
just atmospheric and wonderful. And because I want Utterson to have the tools to be in not all the way a fatherly position towards Dr. Jekyll,
But
but
a
to be
little bit.
older and wiser and be capable of perceiving what's going on in Jekyll's heart, even if he doesn't know what's going on in the scientific miracle that's taking place, right?
Okay.
Okay.
So I think Brian Cox for that role. But then when it comes to Dr. Jekyll and therefore Mr. Hyde, I mean, the cool thing about casting this is we got to find a guy that can go both ways.
Mhm.
And I've seen people do it before. I've seen Tom Hardy play a schizophrenic character where he plays two roles in the same movie, and he does a beautiful job. But it seems a little on the nose. I mean, he's kind of a brutish guy, and the contrast between Jekyll and Hyde needs to be more dramatic than that.
It has to
maybe?
be worlds apart for it to work.
Right. But I
I
don't
have
think it needs to be
seen-
actors apart for it to work. Right. I
Mhm.
mean, wouldn't it be an interesting thing to have the same man play both?
Oh, I think you'd almost have to, wouldn't you?
I mean,
I've
I
seen
would think
James
so.
McAvoy play a schizophrenic character like that. It's very, very scary. I only watched
hadn't
the
thought
trailer
about
and I
that.
swore to never watch the movie because it was so scary. It was a horror
That's a
movie,
good idea. That's a good
but
idea.
he could do it. He can play a very clean cut, nice guy, but he also can play a great villain.
That was a great movie.
I'll
what
bet
about
you.
Carl Urban,
Who is that?
Who's that?
Aomer King of the
Oh.
Rohirrim, who has most
Aomer
recently
King.
played. Thank you. Full title. Who has most recently played had a turn in The Boys, which is an Amazon show that I encourage
yeah.
none of you to watch. A very, very bloody superhero drama that basically says, what if superheroes were real? Let's put them in the real world and see what that kind of British power would actually do to human bodies and stuff. I mean, it's very, very
Sad.
violent and gritty. It says some interesting things about culture and what we think a human being is for. And it's thoughtful, but it's a
Hmm.
rough. I'm not giving it my blessing here. But he's great. Carl Urban is really good. He's looking weathered and old. He's
In a
looking a
cool
lot
way.
older than he was when he played Aomer. That's for sure. It's been 20 years since that came out, right? But he has this blend of nice guy. He can totally do nice, noble character, and then also scuzzy skis bag. And I think he could handle both parts. But that the disadvantage of that is that he's younger by a lot than Brian Cox.
Right.
And so,
You want it to be an older.
yeah, maybe this
Jekyll and
movie should
Hyde.
actually be cast among not the grandfathers of Hollywood, but the old guard. So who would you cast in that case?
I was going to say Benedict Cumberbatch
Yeah, I
because
thought
of
that
the
too.
acting job it would require, but he's not as
Mhm.
old as Brian Cox either.
That's true. Cumberbatch is a good idea.
And I think in the actual story, they were school friends, weren't
School
they?
chums. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
school
Mhm.
chums.
Kenneth Branagh's as old as Brian Cox.
He couldn't do a villain though. You'd want to hug him.
Are you?
Oh,
Yes,
Oh,
he
yes,
can.
he certainly could.
He's a great
He'd
Iago.
be great.
I have
Right.
seen him.
Just
as a
saying,
villain.
I think I would hug Iago when it's him.
Well, but Megan, you've got to have
Hey,
sympathy
Iago,
for Jekyll.
Bring it on. Bring it in.
You've got to
What?
have so much sympathy for Jekyll, right?
Well, that's true.
I mean, you would love Dr. Jekyll if it were Kenneth Branagh.
You have to imagine Kenneth Branagh beating a woman to death with a stick. I can't
Yeah.
do it.
He's a true
That's-
actor.
I don't know.
I think he could do it.
I think that's the casting.
I think
it's
he'd
Brian
like-
Cox
I
and
think
Kenneth
he would
Branagh.
Branagh
like
as
that.
Dr. Jekyll? My God.
Script too. I think he would love the opportunity to do
then
that. If
Because
he
of
goes along
pure
with it.
classic
Maybe
status.
he should
Yeah,
write and
well, and
direct.
the study of human nature that it would provide him, I think he'd dig that.
I think you're right. Maybe he should write and direct. Maybe I've got the wrong
This
director.
doesn't have my public stamp of approval.
Do I have the wrong
I'm against
director? Is
this.
it supposed to be Kenneth Branagh?
I think so. I like him better.
I think the answer to what director is always Kenneth.
It's always Kenneth
Well,
Branagh.
here's what I think though. It depends on if
default
you're
answer.
trying, if you want it to be serious, then it needs to be someone like Christopher Nolan. If you want it to feel like cottage mystery, almost like the Agatha Christie feel, where it's something sinister going on, but we tell it in such a way that you, the audience, are
show,
removed,
people.
It's a
Yeah.
show. Then Kenneth Branagh's the right choice. That's just not how you start it, you know?
No, I do kind of want it to be gritty. I'd love to see it elevated because I think the thematic content is very adult and very weighty. I'd love to see it elevated from kids' book to grown-up drama.
Yeah, that's
Right.
a great idea.
Then not Kenneth.
And not Kenneth.
Does Kenneth ever act without directing anymore?
I don't know. He might be at a
What
stage in
about-
Does
his
he ever
career
play in
where
other
he-
people's parties?
Ian, what about Daniel Day-Lewis?
Ooh.
Daniel Day-Lewis has got
Oh,
the
there we go.
chops.
There we go.
He's definitely got the chops. Could he do
Have to-
suave and debonair? I mean, it's a
Oh,
weird combination of
100%.
roles. Like
Oh.
he's got to be Jekyll is supposed to be bubbly and garrulous and a good times guy.
No. He's stately and urbane and polished.
That's how you. Okay, that's not how I
Yeah.
read
What
the
great
character.
words.
Okay, so in that case, it
Sorry.
totally works for Daniel Day-Lewis to be the guy.
Yeah, it does.
Does Brian Cox have the gravitas to stand opposite Day-Lewis and hold his own?
Oh yeah.
Ian,
Really? Oh,
we
yeah.
just spent like forever watching Succession.
Yeah, but Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest actor of his generation.
Yeah, but there can only be
I just
one of
think that's
those
a lot
anyway.
noise.
Tell us what you really think.
Whoa! Whoa!
I know.
Oh my
Megan's
goodness,
coming
you
into
can-
her own these days.
What can I say? I'm coming in hot these days.
This is such a fun conversation. We're reaching the end of our time together, and I want to give you guys the opportunity. If you have an issue burning in your breast, if there is a conversation from earlier in our season that you can't help but bring back up, please feel free to stick your oar in. Anyone at all? Parting thoughts for our listenership.
Well, I think this
Wait.
is really fun, and I think that I really like movies, and I know they're
Mhm.
not the same thing as books, but I think it is really fun to think of all the different ways that movies communicate and
Mhm.
are an art form in their own right,
Hmm,
and it's been
Yep.
fun to think about that.
agreed.
Agreed.
I really enjoyed looking at movies that had been done multiple times and
Uh-huh.
comparing the different ways that scriptwriters adapted the film and the way that the thematic ideas in the original were addressed or missed altogether,
Mhm.
in the process. Just thinking about film as a way to be in conversation with the original work of literature was really thought provoking.
I was going to say the same thing, that the idea that we always run on, that the great conversation is a long list of books all in the same genre, it has been deepened in my mind as a result of these discussions to include the idea that the great conversation is a long list of ideas
Mm.
being talked about in various genres. And the idea that Herman Melville drops on us in Moby Dick starts its own conversation, the conversation about Moby Dick that goes on in the genre of film as well as anything else. I think that's really been cool to think about.
Hmm.
Just kind of piggybacking on what you said, Missy.
It resonates with it's art, right? That's what art
Yeah.
does.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what it's for, right? Man, I couldn't agree more. I want to offer as my parting shot a recommendation to all of our listeners, and we've been cagey with our recommendations because film is sometimes a little bit more, well, it's by nature more graphic than literature, I would argue, and so it's difficult to offer wholehearted, full-throated recommendations. But to all of the grown-ups listening to this show, you should go and watch The Night Manager,
Mm.
which is a British TV series starring Tom Hiddleston and Hugh Laurie as a villain. Hugh Laurie as a villain,
great.
ladies and
See,
gentlemen.
he could be your Jekyll and Hyde.
He totally could. That's what made me think of this. And then Tom Hollander as a demi villain. And
Demi-villain.
it is certainly for grown-ups.
Meaning half a villain.
Half a
Yeah,
villain,
It's like
because
half
he's
size
only,
rated R.
he's only so high. But the reason I bring it up is because I think it is a wonderful example of what I've always been saying about TV series, that it is the novel version of what film can do for a story.
Mhm.
It is enthralling from minute one to the very finish. And it feels like reading a novel. It feels like reading a thriller, like a spy thriller. And it's literary. The script is super well written. It's very articulate, and the acting is top notch. And you should go.
It's
watch it.
also literally an adaptation of a work of literature.
Isn't
a
that
John le Carré novel.
Le
Yeah.
Carré?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So a really great achievement by the filmmaking world, I think, is The Night Manager. Don't do, however, and I'm going to call out my buddy Whitaker Dunn here on the air. Don't do what he did, which is reluctantly take my advice to go watch this and then accidentally start with the last episode.
Oh no.
no.
And because he believed in me, he watched the whole last episode and got to the end and thought, I don't really know what just happened. It all felt like it was supposed to be really impactful. And then he went back and looked, and there were 5 episodes preceding the
goodness.
big payoff that he had
what a
just watched.
Bummer.
So
Where's your
now
care?
he's having to wait until he's forgotten it all to go back and start from episode 1.
Oh.
So don't do that. But you should definitely go and watch it, and it will introduce
the
better than
beginning.
maybe we all have this whole season, the power of film to tell a literary story.
Oh, cool.
Mhm.
We're living in an era where I think there are more thoughtful TV shows and movies being made than unthoughtful. You know, like
Mhm.
when I was growing up, it was always like TV was the garbage for your brain that you like turned on when you didn't want to think. But like you almost have to think these days. There's so many thoughtful
Yeah.
works of
I
art
was
coming
watching
out.
last night. I was watching one called Dairy Girls, which if you have not seen
Oh.
it, you totally should. The accents alone, their little turns of phrase there in Dairy are so funny. But the storyline also is just what you're saying. Every episode is tight. It's really well written. And there is a larger story arc with historical detail going on in the background that you can either focus on or just enjoy the humor in the moment.
Yep.
But I have a feeling that all those things are going to be tied together the way that they are in a really good book. And
Mm.
I'm really looking forward to this first season, the way that I look forward to the end of the first in a series of
Yeah.
really good novels.
I know what you mean. When I was in college, I had a friend that said, theater is life, film is art, and television is furniture. And I think he was
love
right
that.
back
Yeah.
in the late 80s. But I think you guys might have a point that may not be as true now, given the artistic progress that genre has made as it used to be.
We have taken steps forward from Friends. And I'm not saying Friends isn't great. I loved it,
No, we love Friends.
but we have moved forward from that. I
Cheers
think.
as a work of art.
Well, my friends, thank you so much for your thoughts as usual. And thank all of you listeners for joining us on this journey this season. We will have another one for you in the fall, and we'll get to work busily preparing that. And until we hear from you then, happy reading.
Happy
Happy reading, everybody.